Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman 11. In the last part we started off the game, and now we're going to go after some more Robot Masters. But before that I am going to do what is going to be a relatively common pattern of me going into the shop in between stages to buy some potentially new items. Like in this case I think I get the Shock Absorber and the Energy Enhancer, or not the Energy Enhancer, the Tank Container. Because that's a bit of an odd thing about this game with Energy Tanks and W Tanks and even M Tanks to an extent. In that, from the start of the game, you can only carry 6 each of E-Tanks and W-Tanks. M-Tanks are always the one and done. But with that, you can now carry up to 9. And on that note, even though I never show it off, M-Tanks have a secondary purpose in this game, where if you use them when you're at full health and ammo, it turns all visible enemies on screen into 1-ups, which is odd. And now it's time for a bit of an Ascended Extra situation. Time for Torchman stage. And Torchman himself is a bit of an interesting character in that his name's shown up before in Megaman, but not like this. In the dub for the Megaman NT Warrior anime, the Battle Network anime, essentially, they renamed Fireman.exe to Torchman for no real reason I could see besides potentially having a villain be named after a major occupation that's for public safety, like Fireman, be not so good in the eyes of 4 kids. But additionally, Torchman was one of the Robot Masters in Mega Man 3. The robots are revolting on DOS from like, when was that released? 91, 92, somewhere in that regards. And it's another case of a Robot Master from that game being upgraded, because Oil Man showed up in Powered Up, Wave Man showed up in Mega Man 5, Blade Man in 10, Torchman here, and Shark Man became a Net Nabby in Battle Network. To this day, the only Robot Master in that game that hasn't been reused is Bitman. Now, the major gimmick with Torchman's stage is that firewall we saw a moment ago. That's going to chase us through about 3 or 4 sections of the stage, and if it touches you, it is instant death. The timing for it can be a bit specific, and due to the pretty nasty recoil Mega Man gets when he gets hit by an enemy in this game, it's very easy just to get stunned into getting hit by it. My best advice for you is to A, use the speed gear, and B, go to Tundraman stage first in the order no matter what you do, as you can use the Tundra Storm to freeze the wall for a few moments. And it's also really effective against this mini-boss. This is Sparky, I think? This thing, you can use the Tundra Storm right off the bat to just completely get rid of its fire. If you don't do that, its main attack is to jump all over the place, summoning little baby turkeys out of it, also on fire, to try and damage you. But as you saw, taking out the fire with the Thunderstorm and then just spam firing at it's pretty effective. With that, I should go over to the gallery description for Torchman, though. Torchman was designed as a camping advisor, teaching people about campfire safety. In his spare time, he ventures out into the wild to work on his very own martial art, Torch Jutsu. He started Torch Jutsu in order to train himself to keep his flames under control, since the slightest lapse in judgment can cause a dangerous flare-up. With his training incomplete, he still tends to flare up in moments of strong emotion. He gets particularly excited when it's time for the turkey roast, resulting in many a scorched bird. He once tried training by standing under a raging waterfall. The subsequent repairs took 3 months. And that also reminds me, I think I forgot to read Tundraman's last part. I should probably remedy that. Though Tundraman was designed for land development and exploration in polar climates, he found a new obsession for the first time he saw a TV ice skating championship. Since then, he has spent long years perfecting incredible ice skating techniques out on the polar ice flats. But since his audience is generally huskies, polar bears, and seals, he doesn't get many reviews. Tundraman had a tougher-looking exterior when he was first sent to the North Pole, but he made some modifications to suit his graceful passion of ice skating. To him, the fact his dazzling moves have been locked away in the North Pole and never witnessed it as a crisis on the scale of global warming. Tundraman eagerly awaits the day he can show the world his exquisite skills. You know what? Good for you. Find your own passions and stick to them. Also, a fun little detail that I haven't really mentioned yet. The bios in the gallery for the Robot Masters also mention their manufacturer. Most of them are completely made up just for this game, but Tundraman in specific was manufactured by Cossack Robot Laboratories. So a nice little good shout out to Mega Man 4 there. Now, this is easily the most annoying portion of the stage, because it's really strict timing with the wall to begin with, and the platforming, as I mentioned, can sometimes be a bit iffy with the controls being as precise as they can be. But the biggest pain in the ass here comes into play in this next moment right here, because the tents in this stage, as you may have seen, can sometimes hide enemies. If you're just rushing forward and not firing, thinking you're just going to go right through it, you're easily going to get jumped by those 3 particular enemies, and that's just not going to end well for you. With that said, it's time for Torchman, so get out the Tundra Storm.
Let the combat commence! Fall to the fist of flame!
Torchman's a really fun fight. He's going to fire various height torch fists at you, generally ones you can jump over or slide under. If you get too close to him, he'll do a kick attack. But he'll also eventually do occasional backflips and even attempt a jump kick into you, which I think is the best opportunity to use the Tundra Storm on him, unless you're using the power geared version. Eventually, he'll activate his own power gear, though, in which case he'll become invincible and fire generally 3 flame wheels at you, and then he'll try to land right on top of you. The thing I can't tell about that landing attack, though, is the floor itself lights up on fire slightly when that happens. And the back of my brain says that's going to hurt you if you're standing on it, but I've honestly never tried to stand on it and see what happens. At least, actively intending to. The jump kick's a bit of a hard attack to dodge. I think the best way to do it is what I just did there, and that's jump over it when he gets close to the ground. But if you just play things a bit defensively in this fight, you should be pretty fine. I wouldn't say he's an ideal first Robot Master choice, because he's pretty active, but if you find a pretty decent spot for a rotation that puts him early on, I think you can take him out pretty easily.
Hiya!
Plus, I love his design. In fact, I'll just say right now, I think Megaman 11's set of Robot Masters is probably the most well-rounded bunch we've seen in a while, because I don't think there's a single actively dumb design in this game. Maybe Bounce Man, but that's more of a preference thing. But for beating Torchman, we get one of my favorite weapons in the game for just use in random stages, and I also just love the look of this thing. This is the Blazing Torch. You fire a fireball a bit above you and a bit in front of you, and it'll then shoot down at a 45-degree angle to wherever it is in front of you. When used in conjunction with the power gear, you fire an even larger projectile that splits off into even more powerful offshoots. For taking care of shielded enemies like Sniper Joes, this is a very good weapon. Though my usual thought process for Mega Man games does continue here, where I don't tend to use a special weapon in the stage of a boss that's weak against it. But weapon energy drops relatively commonly in this game, so I do use it a bit more commonly here than in most other Mega Man games. Oh yeah, and they're about the mystery chip. That's a bit of an odd item. It increases the amount of screws you get by playing a level, as long as you're playing it quickly. Which is useful for my run, but it might not be the most for you. But now it's time for us to go after Bakugo from My Hero Academia. No, this is Blastman, who is a bit of a unique instance in the series in that he is so far the only Robot Master in a classic Mega Man game who is based off of their NetNavi counterpart instead of the vice versa. Because Blastman was a NetNavi in Mega Man Battle Network 6, and I love his design here. I hope they do this in future Mega Man games, just because I want to see what they can do with some of the more unique NetNavis that were in that series. With that said, Blastman's bio in the gallery reads that he is a pyrotechnician, or in his words, an explosion artist, who designs the explosive effects for movies and theme parks. He can provide any explosion the client needs, from cataclysmic blasts to shy little bangs. At the time of this Wiley incident, he was working on a new explosion-themed attraction for the theme park, Flowerland, which I'm assuming is where this stage is taking place. In his spare time, he writes a column for his favorite magazine, Boom Monthly. There's not a month goes by that his explosive opinions don't blow the pages to bits. Probably literally. And his stage, as you can tell, is very explosives-based. There's lasers all over the place that you trigger that'll cause blocks almost out of Grenade Man stage to explode in sequence, and you can get damaged pretty easily here if you're not being careful. With that said, you can also use those blocks to your advantage with either exploding certain enemies into them, or just using them as a way to get around. Also, this is a mini-boss, or rather I should say, it was a mini-boss. The mini-bosses in this game, each one of them is unique, but if you smartly use the power gear in conjunction with specific abilities, they don't get much of a chance to do anything, as will generally be the course moving forward, especially after I get Blastman's own weapon, as his is particularly useful against most of them for its high damage. at least when used in conjunction with the power gear. Also, there's a nice little reference in this stage that I don't think appears a single time for the rest of the stage, but early on, there were some cars that the bomb triggers could blow up that would fly up into the air. Those are the closest thing we've seen in Classic to the design of the truck that Roll uses in the first Mega Man Legends as the dev room. There's one right there, actually. Seeing that on the first playthrough just made me smile, because it's some love to Legends, and I could always use some of that. I'm hoping for the eventual Legends Legacy Collection so it can do well enough that Capcom will say, you know, let's give Legends 3 another shot. Mind you, I'm also hoping for the eventual Battle Network and Star Force Legacy Collection, though I'm not sure if I'd want those to be 1 or 2 collections. Just to see if they do anything further in that particular gameplay style. I don't think I'd ever want a true Battle Network 7, just because I feel that series has run its course, but I wouldn't mind that Star Force 4 we got the rough idea for, where you meet Land's actual, like, great-grandson or whatever. That could be interesting. But I also feel like Star Force 3 served as a relatively solid conclusion, so I'm conflicted. With that, it's time for Blastman himself, and of course he's weak against the Blazing Torch.
Retaliate or detonate! Explosion is art!
Blastman tends to stick to either of the extreme corners, though he can occasionally try to charge into you, in which case he'll tend to jump back and fire any of his volleys of Chain Blast mines. There's a couple of ones that stay high, ones that stay low, and then these ones will try to track onto you. But as you can see, Blazing Torch takes him out pretty quickly, to the point where he's one of the few Robot Masters you might not get to see the power gear of. When he uses it, his bombs get bigger, but he only throws 3 of them. Speaking of which, we get that very Chain Blast weapon for our own use, and this is another really good weapon. You can fire up to 4 mines on screen at a time. You can remote detonate them by pressing down in the attack button. But they can stack onto one enemy and hover around them, to the point where you can have a lot of bombs on screen at once, taking things out in pretty good sequence. With that said, I think a single group of 4 is still less powerful than the Power Gear incarnation, where you throw out one gigantic Chain Blast mine that has a gigantic explosion radius. This is the mini-boss Destroyer.
Doctor, is something wrong?
The double gear system. It was so very long ago. It was on that day Wily and I had our falling out. He quite literally threw a wrench in our gears. We were students then, each pursuing robotics research in our own way. Each of us was passionate about forging the way ahead to a future where humans and robots might live together in harmony. By giving robots independent thought, they could be true partners to humankind at last.
Naive as always. Even robots that think for themselves will never be anything more than tools. But with unstoppable power, insurmountable speed, it's only when we build robots with the power to outdo humans that people will truly accept robots for what they are. And with my double gear system, we can make that dream a reality. With this installed, any robot can instantly become a hero.
However, I was strongly opposed to Wily's ideas and research. The double gear system, it puts an incredible strain on the robots that use it. And if it fell into the wrong hands, it could be used to cause terrible harm. At the time, a committee was convened, and Wily's research was cancelled in favor of my independent thought research. Wily never forgave me, and his views have grown ever more extreme since then. How ironic that my efforts to quench Wily's hot-headedness before it led him astray only ended up fueling the fire.
Doctor, I never knew.
If only I'd shown him there was a way to work together, instead of just telling him that he was wrong. Maybe we'd still be friends.
A way to work together.
Even the double gear system can be a tool for good, if used properly. But using it properly requires proper judgment. Wily's dream of developing technology to make any robot into a hero could become reality if used by you. I'm trusting you, Megaman. Oh, I almost forgot something very important. I've just finished giving Rush a good tune-up. He's all ready to head out with you. Rush! Rush, help Megaman and keep him safe. Be a good boy now.
We've got this, Rush. Okay, let's go!
And with that, we now have access to RushJet. You use this by pressing the circle button by default, though, because I'm on PC, and I remapped some buttons, this is mapped to G for me, which is a little bit awkward. Though thankfully it's not as useful as other RushJets due to an ability we'll get later on. But before I end off, I do want to note that I do find this game a bit interesting in that they actually dared to do something new to Mega Man lore in it, and that we actually get to see the moment then where Dr. Wily and Light had their rift so long ago in that intro cutscene. I was legitimately surprised to see them do something that important to Mega Man lore in a game that was kind of a risk in some regards in their eyes to begin with. But I'm very glad they did, because it made this game actually feel like it had some weight in the overall classic timeline. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, get this, more Robot Masters. See you guys then.